Howdy. What's your name?
Chantel.
Hey, Chantel.
Hi. So one of the favorite things of mine that you've ever said, and I'm going to butcher it, but was that if it takes longer for you to recover from the time that you spend with someone than it is the time that you spend with them, they're not the right people in your lives. Something like that. And I've recently gone no contact with my mother for that reason. And I just, going into this idea about attachment and expectations, that's something that I have really struggled with. The expectations that I had for my relationship with her, and almost the mourning of that not being what I really hoped for. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts about it.
Oh, I love talking about my issues with my mother.
Ryan, you hate your dad, don't you?
You could fill a barn with the people I hate.
We have.
Oh.
I kid. He loves you, I think. But he doesn't need you for happiness.
And I love my mom, and I love my dad. So with my mother, she was a bad mom. It's just as simple as that. And I held a lot of resentment towards her. Same thing with my stepdad. He was even a worse, stepdad than my mom was a mom. And I separated myself from having contact with them for the most part. I'd see them every once in a while. And I think it was like probably 4 or 5 years ago that I just had this, I don't know, I was having this internal dialogue where I was kind of complaining about the situation I had growing up. And then there was like this, this voice that was like, why do you think you deserved anything different? Why do you think you were entitled to anything different? And I'm like, that's an interesting thought, because it's an expectation. It's an entitlement that I had that wasn't being met. So now I used to very much dislike my mother and my stepdad. And then the next thing I thought was how, I was 36 years old when I had this thought, and my mom had me at 22. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, your mom was 22 when she had you. Like, she didn't really know what she was doing. Like, you're 36 years old. Do you know what you're doing? And I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, I know some of the stuff I'm doing, but like, there's a lot I don't know what I'm doing. So for me to have that expectation of my mother to have it figured out at 22 and how to raise me correctly until, I moved out of the house, like, that was, I felt it to be unfair. And ultimately, I just kind of came to the conclusion that, like, there's nothing written in the fabric of the universe that says we deserve good parents. We want it, but like, there's nothing that says that that's what we're entitled to. And when I started to look at my mom's relationship that I had with her through that lens, I was able to have a bit more compassion for her. And, one of the things that I used to get upset about is how she always wanted to tell me how, me and my brothers and sisters were the cause of her problems, which made me in turn just push her further away and be like, well, you don't understand how much you were a problem to me. And we just kept kind of going, head to head on that, and we wouldn't listen to each other. And I started to listen to her. And I realized that I had to kind of parent her in a way. And I started to treat her how I wish she would have treated me. And when I did that, like, when I started to see her battles and like really listen to what she was having issues with, and I can't even believe how awesome our relationship is now. Because as soon as I started to listen to her, she started to listen to me. And now, like, we have an amazing relationship. I love my mother very much. And same thing with my stepdad. Like, I started to look at it through that lens as well, where I look at a hurt little boy who's living in this like 70-year-old who's like just mean and angry all the time. And then I think about all the trauma he was probably put through as a kid. And when I start to let go of that entitlement, it helps me to see them for who they are. And that leads to more compassion. So the more you can open up for compassion for your parents, and I'm not saying that's possible with every single situation, but that is the best way to start healing any type of relationships like that, in my experience.
I think there's a bookend to that as well. And I love what Ryan said about there's nothing written into the fabric of the universe that says I'm entitled to good parents. But also, they aren't entitled to your time, your attention, your resources, your kindness, your caring. In fact, if they've forsaken you for so long, you don't have to keep giving those resources to someone else. You can still love them, but you might have to love that person from a distance.
So in this true crime documentary that we just watched,
It's called The X-Files.
I think it's called like Chasing the Ghost or something like that, but you'll find it. It's on Netflix. Really, really fascinating. But one of the things that united all the people that got conned once they found out they were conned is they all had a difficult time getting over it. And it wasn't because of the money they lost. It was because of the fact that they got conned. And everyone had this story going on that says, what I experienced only happens to stupid people. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have fallen for that? I'm saying it. How could I have been so stupid? You know? And sometimes when we suffer heartbreak or disappointment or setback, it's tempting to subscribe to this narrative that says, if I were a good person, if I were a smart person, if I were the right kind of person, this would have never happened to me. And the fact that I'm in this situation means that I'm fundamentally wrong in a way that normal, sane, healthy people are not. But the Temptations had it right when they said, everybody plays the fool. No exception to the rule, right? The rich and the poor, the smart, the successful, the pretty people, the people whose unique form of beauty is not celebrated, everybody, right? Like, everybody plays the fool, everybody gets their heart broken, everybody has moments. And I would encourage you as you go through this process to perhaps be friendly to yourself and maintain contact with yourself and forgive yourself for even being in this situation where you have to make a choice like that in order to be healthy. Everyone has their own version and variation of stories like that because we each have an evolutionary journey where we have to grow into the best version of ourselves, and none of us are free of having to go through our own version of hell. There's nothing wrong with you for having to go through this. And you can always take the perspective of asking yourself, how can I learn from this without carrying around the baggage that says, I should have known better than that. That's all I'll say.
Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalist Private Podcast, available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.